It was a huge, and I mean huge night for Donald Trump. Leading up to the Iowa caucuses, all of the smart guys in Washington, D.C., the ones that get paid a lot more than me to show up on a very fancy cable news set and give their analysis, they all said, well, yes, Trump will win, but the question is by how much? And they were already sort of rewriting the narrative about, well, the real story out of Iowa is who comes in second. Really? That's the real story in an election, is who came in second? And by the way, they were setting the storyline up to be all about Nikki Haley. That's the reason they were saying that. The big news is going to be who comes in second, because they thought Nikki Haley would come in second. And she didn't. Now, we'll get to that in a minute. But there is no denying the fact that it was a giant victory for Donald Trump at every level. He won every county. He won every demographic except one, and we'll get to that too. He dominated with evangelicals. He dominated with college-educated voters, which we all heard for weeks now that Nikki Haley gets the educated Republican vote, implying that Trump voters were uneducated. Well, no, actually, Trump beat Nikki Haley with college-educated voters too. By every stretch of the imagination, Donald Trump emerged as a historic victor last night with 51% of the vote. This is the first time in modern history that a candidate not running as an incumbent got more than 50% in the Iowa caucuses. You take every voter who didn't vote for Trump, you put him into one bucket, coalescing around one candidate, which they didn't. But if they had, Trump still would have won. It was giant. And his victory speech was well-deserved. Take a listen to the tone he struck last night. It's very informative here because he talks about unity, and not about unity in the Republican Party, although that is important and it's implied. No, he talks about unity in our nation.
Well, I want to thank everybody. This has been some period of time, and most importantly, we want to thank the great people of Iowa. Thank you. We love you all. What a turnout, what a crowd. And I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together. We want to come together, whether it's Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative. It would be so nice if we could come together and straighten out the world and straighten out the problems and straighten out all of the death and destruction that we're witnessing. That's practically never been like this. It's just so important. And I want to make that a very big part of our message. We're going to come together. It's going to happen soon, too. It's going to happen soon.
We're going to come together, and it's going to happen soon. We have to do this because of the terrible situation our country is in. I want to contrast that to Joe Biden last night. Now, there wasn't an Iowa caucus for Democrats, none to speak of, because the Democratic Party apparently these days doesn't really believe in democracy. They have strong-armed various states to tell them that they can't even have a caucus or primary, even in the case of New Hampshire, where it's actually state law that they must have a primary before every other state has a primary. No, the Democrats said, you do that and you won't even be able to use those delegates at the convention, because the Democratic Party wants this to be a coronation. They don't want a debate. They don't want any other voices. It's why Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually dropped out of the Democrat race, and he's running as an independent, because the Democrats just want you to accept one choice and one choice only, Joe Biden. They don't want him challenged in any way whatsoever. So where's the unity on their side? Well, Joe Biden, who didn't have to run yesterday, he took to social media and he posted this message. Looks like Donald Trump just won Iowa. He's the clear frontrunner on the other side at this point. Let me just pause there for a minute. This is the President of the United States, and he won't even say the Republican Party. He won't say my political opponents. He calls us the other side. Kind of divisive language for Mr. Unity over there in the White House. He then went on to say, here's the thing. This election was always going to be you and me versus extreme MAGA Republicans. It was true yesterday, and it'll be true tomorrow. And then he asks for a donation. Contrast that with Donald Trump at his moment of victory last night, calling for the nation to unite. This wasn't Joe Biden, president of the United States, asking for the nation to unite. This was Joe Biden asking for donations and saying that his political opponents are the other side and extremists. According to Real Clear Politics, the latest national polls show that Joe Biden is losing to Donald Trump by 2.5 percentage points, meaning that a majority of American voters right now, if they had to choose, would choose to elect Donald Trump. And your president, the president of the United States, calls all of them extremists. Quite a contrast, isn't it? Meanwhile, Donald Trump reached out to his biggest political opponents in this primary race, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. Now, Ron DeSantis finished 30 points behind former President Trump. Nikki Haley, another 3 points behind Ron DeSantis. They were a very distant second and third. And for his part, Donald Trump sort of reached out an olive branch.
I want to thank some of the great people. We have so many senators. If I go through every name, we'll be here all night and everybody's going to get angry at me. But the senators, the congressmen from Washington, they came down from all different states. I want to thank you very much. I want to congratulate Ron and Nikki for having a good time together. We're all having a good time together. And
I do love that. I want to thank Ron and Nikki for having a good time together. Boy, they were having a good time, weren't they? Because he didn't really participate much in the debates, and it turned out that Ron and Nikki ended up sort of at the end there beating each other up quite a bit. But again, this is Donald Trump doing in his own way his part in trying to unite the party and ultimately uniting all American voters for the task ahead. He also had specific words of gratitude for Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, we're going to get to what Vivek said in a minute, where he suspended his campaign and endorsed Donald Trump. And because of that, well, Donald Trump had a specific call out for Vivek.
I also want to congratulate Vivek because he did a hell of a job. He came from zero and he's got a big percent, probably 8%, almost 8%. And that's an amazing job. They all did. They're all very smart people,
They all did a great job. They're all very smart. They're all very capable. Now, again, yesterday's program, we led and talked for 20 minutes about how Donald Trump was basically throwing Vivek Ramaswamy under the bus, right? Saying, he's not who he pretends to be. He's very cute, very sneaky, right? But if you vote for him, you're voting against us, right? And then today, after he wins, he reaches out and he says, they're all very smart. They're all very capable. Congratulations. Great job. This is what he does. And by the way, it's politics. This is what they all do. He just does it a little differently because he's not a born politician. I remember 2008 when Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were at each other's throats. They were ready to kill each other. The whole question as to whether whether Barack Obama was born in the United States or was born in Kenya, the birther thing, that all started from the Hillary Clinton campaign, folks. I'm sorry if you're not old enough to remember that, and I'm even sorrier that I am old enough to remember that. But somehow they figured it out after the primary and caucus process. They coalesced around the winner, and the next thing you know, Hillary Clinton is the Secretary of State and such a huge supporter of Barack Obama, who apparently, after she became Secretary of State, was no longer born in Kenya. He was 100% born in Hawaii. Sure, that's how it works, you see. You can go all the way back to Ronald Reagan and George Bush back in 1980, where they were certainly at each other's throats. True, they hated each other during the primary process. Reagan won. Reagan wanted to unite the Republican Party, and so he brought Bush and the Bushies onto the ticket, and they won. They won in a landslide. 4 years later, they won 49 out of 50 states. This is what needs to happen. Now, Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama and other candidates who have had to do the same thing, they were a lot better at sort of attacking each other and then mending fences. Let's not forget, Kamala Harris during the primaries 4 years ago was calling Joe Biden a racist and said he was responsible for her having to be bussed and the fact that Biden opposed busing. Remember all of that? And then he ended up putting her on the ticket because that's the political calculation you make to have to win an election. The question is going forward for Republicans is how does Trump do it this time around? How does he unite the party and bring people together? Now, I'm going to get to that in a few moments because I have some ideas. But it's instructive to see how Trump handled things last night after a knockout punch. He spent a lot of time talking about unity and a lot of time he didn't have to spend talking up his opponents like Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, and Vivek Ramaswamy. But that wasn't all he said. He did, in fact, target who really needs to be addressed here by all Republicans, candidates, and voters, and that is Joe Biden. And he did it in his own way.
So I don't want to be overly rough on the president, but I have to say that he is the worst president that we've had in the history of our country. He's destroying our country.
I'm sorry, it's too good. I want to watch it again because this is classic Trump. I don't want to be too hard on the president.
So I don't want to be overly rough on the president, but I have to say that he is the worst president that we've had in the history of our country. He's destroying our country.
I mean, I want to see what it looks like when Trump decides he is going to be overly rough on the president. It's going to happen, by the way. But that's what it sounds like when he's in the mode of unity and trying to bring everybody together. I don't want to be overly rough on the president, but he's the worst president we've had in our history, and he's destroying our country. But that's great. I mean, and it's great in that that's the mindset Republicans have to have right now. The issue is Joe Biden. The issue is what he and his extremists who support him, what they're doing to this country and what they're sending our country into, domestically as well as internationally. I mean, this came yesterday, the Iowa caucus, on the same day that we had the Iranians sending missiles to our consulate in Iraq and claiming responsibility for it, bragging about it. Yeah, you betcha we sent those rockets to the U.S. consulate in Iraq. And this is days after Joe Biden said, yeah, I warned Iran. They know they shouldn't do anything. How many times do we see this ridiculous spectacle of people saying to Joe Biden, what's your message for Iran? And he's like, don't. That's my message. Well, they just did. We need the Republicans to win. We need to replace this president. It's serious, deadly serious. And last night we saw Donald Trump beginning the process of uniting the party and hopefully uniting the country to that end.